Hallo und herzlich willkommen zur nächsten Ausgabe von Beer Lovers Drink at Home Online-Tasting. Heute Abend haben wir wieder mal zwei Gäste von einer der meiner Meinung nach besten Brauereien aus England. Wirklich eine Brauerei, die uns sehr viel Freude schon in Österreich bereitet hat und die auch mit einem ihrer Biere so quasi ein bisschen die Bierwelt in den letzten Jahren geprägt hat. Aber wir werden viel Spaß haben heute mit unseren zwei Gästen. Ganz kurz noch für diejenigen, die zum ersten Mal heute dabei sind. Ihr habt in euren Paketen wieder eine kurze Erklärung zu den Personen, die heute für euch da sind, die mit euch gemeinsam die Biere verkosten. Auf der Rückseite wieder diese Verkostnotizen, wo ihr ganz einfach seht, die Reihenfolge der Biere und kurze Notizen dazu. Und dann gibt es diesen Verkostungsbogen, wo ihr euch ganz einfach Notizen machen könnt über die jeweiligen Biere. Ihr müsst diesen Verkostungsbogen natürlich nicht nützen, aber es ist manchmal ganz interessant, damit man sich zurückerinnert, wie das ein oder andere Bier gekostet hat. Und eben, es geht wieder auf die Optik hin, aufs Aroma, auf die Haptik, sprich, wie ist der Eindruck am Gaumen, Geschmack natürlich. Und dann werden wir ein bisschen über das Foodpairing reden, weil wir haben heute eben auf der einen Seite einen Verkäufer und auf der anderen Seite den Production Manager, sprich den zweiten Braumeister von der Brauerei. So, jetzt würde ich sagen, wir switchen to English und good evening, guys.
Hi, how's it going?
Good evening.
We are well here in Vienna, thank you. Or in Austria, we have to say.
Good.
So, then I would say James. James is the sales manager, the export sales manager of Thornbridge. I would say start, explain us a little bit about you and about the brewery before we switch then to Dom to get a little bit more in the technical details.
No problem. So, hello everyone. My name's James Buchanan. I may have met some of you previously, and firstly, just to say, thank you all for taking part this evening and for, coming along to try some beers with us, to hang out with us as well, and hopefully you enjoy everything we go through this evening. As for myself, I started 7 years ago at Thornbridge Brewery. I studied international business, got my degree in that, so that's always been my passion alongside beers as well. Working in bars and really good beer pubs whilst I was studying for that. So really in the end, a career sort of in exports and in beer exports seemed to be the perfect choice. So been, like I say, 7 years now working up to sort of taking over the entire export department. We're into 40 different countries through Europe, Asia, as far as New Zealand, Australia, and seeing, which is fantastic because we see such a great demand for all of our beers everywhere we go, from our well-known Jaipur to our new kind of, our hazy New England styles. The Jamestown's been very successful recently. And so, that's a little bit about me. We'll talk through a little more of the brewery itself properly. We'll come to the beers too. But I'll pass on to Dom to kind of introduce himself as well.
Hi guys, I'm Dominic. I'm the second brewer, or the production manager. So I look after the brew team at Thornbridge. We've got a brew team of seven brewers, 7 people on shift. We've also got a team of operatives who are doing the packaging. We've got a team of 12 there. It's 4 brews a day, 5 days a week. We like to have the weekends off. It's an all modern kit, KHS packaging lines. And we're set in a beautiful part of the Peak District in Bakewell. It's been pretty intense. We do a lot of cans at the moment, a lot of bottles. We miss making draft beer and cask beer and keg beer, but hopefully that'll soon pick up again soon. So
we hope so too.
Definitely.
That it will pick up soon. So Tom, what you did before you joined Thornbridge?
I was at Marble Brewery in Manchester. It was a lot smaller, mainly cask beer and some bottle conditioned beers. We had a lot of fun making imperial stouts and barley wines before they'd really become fashionable. But that was 6 years there, and I always admired Thornbridge ever since they first got going, and it was an honour to be asked to come and work at Thornbridge and be part of the team. So, and the brewers before myself and Rob, who's the current head brewer, they weren't really production brewers, and we've sort of formed a production team now, just of brewers make sure that the quality of the beer is absolutely perfect or as good as it possibly can be, and keep driving the brewery forward, basically.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we will talk a little bit later about all this technical stuff also. But James, now switch back to James. 2005, Thornbridge was founded.
That's it. So we
tell us a little bit where it was founded. How big the system was. Maybe you can tell us who were one of the first brewer who joined Thornbridge in the beginning.
So as you say, we started in 2005. Thornbridge was began by two guys, Jim and Simon. They're still the owners today, but they founded it back then. And they actually worked on a number of businesses together before that, so they knew each other well. They were coming into it having, imported coffee. They'd worked on pickles and chutneys and things under the Thornbridge branding. However, they were both huge beer fans. And actually, there's a brewery in Sheffield called Kellam Island Brewery. The owner had come over. Unfortunately, he's passed away, but he was very influential in beer. He had come up to Thornbridge Hall, which is a fantastic, country estate. It's 100 acres of land. It's got a big coach house in there as part of it. And so he'd come up and said, if ever you owned this sort of land back in the olden days, you'd never drink anyone else's beer. You'd always brew your own. And of course, it sounds like a great idea, really. So you say, okay, fantastic. We're going to try that out. And now Jim and Simon, they loved beer, but they weren't brewers, and luckily in some ways they knew that as well. So they thought, okay, we'll bring some experienced people in. So they brought in Stefano and Martin. So Martin, who I believe is having a chat with you a couple of weeks ago, who's since gone on to found Brewdog. Stefano, who had come over, and now he actually works down at White Shield as well, brewing beers. But they were with us for a while and making, actually beginning on a 10-barrel brew kit. So it was a second-hand kit we brought in, one that does cask beers. And starting out, they had come from, they'd been brewing at university, so they'd got their education, they got their degrees in it, but were coming fresh from there. So the idea was to bring them in with fresh mindsets, excited to start brewing some beers, and actually began with a classic bitter called Lord Marple's. So 4%, fantastic beer. We still brew to this day, really well-rounded, easy drinking, nice dark body on it. And so that one came in as the first beer, and going out around Derbyshire, just onto handfuls, so just cask beer with that, starting to get a bit of a following for it. People were coming up, wanting to try this Lord Marple's from a nice local Bakewell brewery. And suddenly we wanted to do something a bit different as well. So again, Martin and Stefano, along with Jim and Simon, they're drinking all these American-style IPAs coming over, things like Sierra Nevada and all these fantastic beers, and thinking, we want to give this a crack. We want to brew an IPA, import some American hops to have a go with. And so brewed the first batch of Jaipur originally. Jim and his wife had just got married actually in Jaipur in India. So the name was in people's minds, brewing an India Pale Ale. And so they said, okay, we'll brew it up. And, it's 5.9%. And brewing that in 2005 in the UK for cask, people would tell us that we were absolutely mad. Like, people just said to us, this is crazy. No one's going to drink it. This is absolute rocket fuel. But, we thought, well, we'll give it a go anyway. And in that first year, it was voted best beer in Sheffield. So 2005, it won the Sheffield Camera Beer Festival on cask. And almost since then, we've almost never been able to brew enough Jaipur. The demand is always coming in for it. We do it in all these different formats as well now. And it's the beer that in 2005 put us on the map, really just helped to get our name out there, brought the demand in. It's won over 100 awards worldwide throughout its history now, and still continues to be our flagship beer to this day in all those packaging formats as well.
So, one question, James. Back in 2005.
Yeah.
Maybe also you, Tom, you have an idea, or you can give us an idea how the landscape of breweries looked like back in 2005. Were there a lot of breweries brewing an IPA like Jaipur? Or was it kind of something like really new for the whole country?
There were no breweries making a beer that strong as a normal cask beer. The small brewery scene was 4%. It was 3.8% beer. So we had golden ales and we had hops. We had New Zealand hops, American hops, mainly Cascade, and people would get excited about Centennial, if they could get hold of 5 kilos. And I remember being at a beer festival before I worked at Thornbridge, and someone said, "Here, try this," and it was a Jaipur, and it just sort of like opened me up. So it was at the time it was totally different to anything that you could get hold of at a beer festival, at a bar, and it's a lot of people's sort of introduction to what beer really could be, other than traditional English beer. So there were small breweries around, but there's never a lot of money in the brewing. It was just more of a hobby for these breweries. And Thornbridge have always come in with, if we're going to do something, let's do it properly. And that's where it really started.
So Dom, we can say then more or less it was a game changer in the beer industry in the UK, huh?
Yeah, people still write about it. A lot of the beer writers, they still want to do interviews on when it all started, the old recipe, which hasn't really changed at all.
Oh, okay.
So it's always been sort of quite a bitter beer with that sort of American hop blend. So.
Let's talk a little bit about the yeast you're using. Is there something like a house yeast? Is it a house yeast strain which you use for more or less maybe most of the beers, or you have?
Well, we're quite lucky.
Kind of yeast.
We've got our own yeast propagation kit, so we can grow up any strain that we want to.
Okay.
Straight from a slant, or we can steal yeast from another brewery and use that. It's not a problem. So for making our English style beers like Shelby and say sometimes AM PM and Cask Jaipur, we've got our own British fruity strain.
Okay.
It's sort of a West Yorkshire style, so a lot of apple flavour, but without acetaldehyde. And really sort of gives a lot of depth to beer. We use a lot of the WLP 001, which is a California ale strain. So a lot of the bottled, American style beers have that.
Okay.
And we have our own lager strain as well, which is from a popular South German brewery.
Okay.
But yeah, yeast is obviously extremely important to me. It's like 90% of the work. So you keep the yeast happy, and you get great tasting beer.
It's the same with the wife at home, huh? Keep the wife happy, then we all happy. No. No. It was only fun. Okay. And the rest of the ingredients?
Yeah, so we use Simpson's malt, which one of
okay.
There's about 3 or 4 good maltsters in England. All, they're all very good. Simpson's, we have a very good relationship with them. We use Maris Otter as the base malt for almost everything. For our German style beers, we use Bamberger Malzerei from Bamberg, obviously. Okay. And then we get colours in from various. So we use coloured malts from Fawcett's, which is a Yorkshire, a North England maltster. They make very good colours, and also Simpsons as well. Okay. We also use a few different sugars as well, which is alien to German brewing, and but in England it's quite important to use these invert sugars to add flavour. The Belgians call them candy sugars. We just call them brewing sugars. So
brewing sugars.
Sometimes that will be 5 to 10% of the grist. So.
Okay. And the hops?
Hops from wherever. We've been in the game quite a while, and we've got some very good relationships with hop merchants, with Yakima Chief, who supply a lot of our the fancy citras, and we have a good relationship with hops in Australia, so we get very good Galaxy. German-wise, Hallertau tradition from Hopsteiner and Savinsky Goldings. And we go direct to a farm in England for our English hops called Hewkins. They're based in Kent, sort of near London. And their Fuggles and Goldings are fantastic quality.
Okay.
We don't need to use old hops. We don't need to use anything other than the best. So.
Okay, it seems so. Cool. I would say we're gonna start with the first beer.
Okay, cool.
Sounds good.
Non-alcoholic pale ale. New label, new name.
Yeah.
Before, for all who knows, it was called Big Easy.
Mhm.
You have to change the name, James. Is this
Yes,
right?
unfortunately, it actually. So we had Big Easy. There is a restaurant group in London who had just trademarked it. So
okay.
basically, sent us it was a very polite exchange. They sent us a letter, said, "Okay, no problem." So we changed it to 05 instead. So same beer, but just a new name and new label.
Cool. Okay. Then let's see how it tastes. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So I would say, Tom, explain us a little bit, how you make this beer, and then we will talk about the color and all this flavor. But now let's start with the production. How is this beer made?
So we had a couple of goes at it before we were happy.
Okay.
Normally in a big brewery, you'd have a dealcoholization plant, so you would make beer and then take the alcohol out, or the other way is an arrested fermentation. And what we didn't want is the kind of worty flavor. We wanted to avoid that, and the challenge was to try and get it some body, give it the right color, and get some hop flavor through, so people feel like they're having a beer. These beers are getting very popular, so there's some challenges in terms of, it's obviously quite a low amount of malt used to make the beer, so you don't have a lot of it's difficult to get the head retention without, we use dark crystal and Munich and these big sort of proper British malts to give plenty of as much body as possible. The fermentation is always quite difficult as well, so we have to add twice the amount of yeast, and it goes basically from 2 Plato to 1 Plato. The very small fermentation. There's quite a calculation to do for the dilution, so we get the alcohol right. It absolutely cannot be above 0.5% ABV by law. If it's tested to be above that, then we'd be in trouble with the Food Standards Agency. So
I guess it's the same everywhere.
So it's a little bit of a challenge for us on that front. It's more difficult for the hop flavor to come through, so it's double the dry hop of Jaipur, and so it's quite a low bitterness of around 25 to 30 IBU. It's just trying to get that right balance so it actually tastes like a normal beer as much as possible. In fact, I was talking to Garrett Oliver from Brooklyn Brewery about it maybe 2 weeks ago, and it's his favorite low alcohol beer. So he was trying to get all the secrets from it. I'm like, no, you can go and learn yourself how to make it. So I think theirs is very good as well, and I think they start at sort of 8 Plato and down to about 6.5.
Okay.
But I think the American hops, there's Citra in there just a little bit, Chinook, Amarillo. We use quite a bit of dried orange peel, the coarse orange peel, at the end of the boil, and that gives a bit of bitterness and just a little bit more flavor. But yeah, it's quite a clean beer. It's quite easy to drink, and it, to me, it actually feels like you are having a beer. It sort of satisfies the beer craving, as it were. So.
Yeah. But is it what you're using, a centrifuge, or is it filtered, or?
Yeah, we don't have a filter, so we use a polished centrifuge.
Okay.
So we'll give it time at 22 degrees and then down to 12 for dry hop and maturation, which is the warm maturation temperature of ales. And then we crash it to -1, add a little bit of silica and centrifuge. We have a polished centrifuge, which we run quite slowly by centrifuge standards. And the idea is not to prepare the beer for a filter, it's to get it as bright as possible. So it takes a long time, but we can get it stable for 6 months to a year quite easily. And I think when you start using filters, it takes a lot of the flavor out, and that's something we want to avoid. And the centrifuge sort of keeps everything in. It seems to disturb the beer less. You don't see the drop in IBUs, you don't see the drop in in hop flavor and aromatics. So
Okay.
yeah.
So there's the first question coming, which is not really going to 05, but there's a question about Raven Black IPA. Is it available, or still brew it, or is it delisted?
We'll look to maybe bring it back later this year at some point is the plan. If we, at the minute, we're full capacity now, so fitting anything in at the moment, we'll always try and get them through. But Raven, yes, it should be back later this year at some point, but it's not.
I signed a label off for it. I'm sure it's coming through.
Okay. So Alexandra, good news. It will come through later this year.
It is. We'll keep you updated on it.
Overall, Tom, you can see the demand of non-alcoholic beer is growing in the UK.
Absolutely. I was at a head brewers group meeting maybe this time last year, and a lot of the head brewers from the big breweries like Green King and Marston's, they were laughing and saying, non-alcoholic beers have got no chance. And I sat there with Fergus from Adnams Brewery, which is a family brewery in Suffolk, and we said, well, we can do 50, 100 hectolitres a week of this beer, no problem. And people couldn't understand who was drinking it. But I think with the demands of the modern lifestyle, it's more and more difficult to drink beer in the evenings during the week. So people just want to go out and see their friends, be social. Well, before the pandemic anyway. And it's just a good option. Just, you can maybe have 1 or 2 pints and then just move on to the non-alcoholic beer, or do it the other way. You're still fresh for the morning. And see, I think the social interaction, the public house is very important for people. And but drinking too much beer can be a problem, and non-alcoholic and low-alcoholic beers, I think they've got a good part to play. I mean, 3 years ago, no one was drinking them.
I agree. But last year, normally, they should be already prepared, for a non-alcoholic beer. Also the bigger ones, Green King and all that big names, But I guess this day, they already have a non-alcoholic beer as well, huh?
Absolutely. Everyone's bringing them back, so.
And especially, with these non-alcoholic pale ales and IPAs, it's a really game changer, and we also can see.
And we have here in the UK dry January. So every January now, there's just a huge push across, even on trade, you see them, because people want to get behind it. And so that's helped to really boost the profile of low and no alcohol beers as well. And so it almost kicks off every year. People have overindulged over Christmas and New Year. They want to start fresh. So people feeling like they can do it as part of almost a bit of a movement, really, with dry January, and lots of people all together around the UK, all across social media. You'll see people pushing it too. So for us, we'll always see a bump at the start of the year for 05, and we brewed a different one earlier this year as well, just to really to make sure we had some options for dry January. But that's helped to raise the profile of the styles as well, and really get it through the rest of the year from there.
We also can see a little bit of increase with the dry January in Austria, but overall, we are used to drink a lot, so it doesn't matter if it's January or December.
Me too.
So, Tom, are there already plans to come out with another non-alcoholic beer?
Yeah, we made a Little by Little, which was a low-alcohol milk stout.
Okay.
That came out in January and did really well.
Okay.
And we're at full capacity at the moment, but I think when things start to come back to normal, then we'll definitely be looking at doing some more options. We just did a table beer at 2.5%, and as the alcohol increases just a little bit, it's easier to make a better beer. So the brewers were getting excited, and I think that beer sold really well. So
cool.
Yeah, so maybe not 0.5%, but maybe 1.2 or 2.5, something like that.
Something like an easy sessional table beer, as you told. No, it's really refreshing, It's a really, really nice beer. And even, it's non-alcoholic, and that's the good thing at the moment, that you really get some options if you're not allowed to drink, if you have to drive your car. And it's really, really good.
Yeah, it wasn't, even now, a lot of the places in the UK, you only get one, maybe two options that, in honesty, aren't very good, big domestic brewed ones. So now to see those options and to have actually a high quality version of a low alcohol beer, I think is hit the market at the right time for it, really.
Yeah, no, it's really, really good. Tom, you told before Garrett Oliver really liked, he's still liking your non-alcoholic beer. There was a project, it was back in the days, which was, in my opinion, one of the best beers in the last years I ever tasted. It was called Serpent. Were you involved in this project?
Yeah, strongly involved. Garrett, it was a true collaboration. It wasn't just over the internet and you send me a recipe and sort of thing, and it was here for a good 4 weeks in total, sort of 2 weeks at the start of the project. It started off, we went down to Oliver's Cider down just past Birmingham, basically in the countryside, and we did a tasting of all these different ciders and perries. And
hold on a second. So only to all the people at home, Tom Oliver is one of the most famous cider makers you can find, traditional cider makers in the UK. So,
Garrett explained the idea of using the scrapings of the cider barrel, so all the yeast and bacteria, because it's only natural fermentations at Oliver's, and using this to ferment a beer, which would be based upon the sort of Duvel style of, is it Brooklyn 1? The Belgian Gull and Ale. And so looking at the scale of the project, he was talking about doing 20,000 bottles. We were a little bit sort of unsure. So beer fermented with cider. So yeah, that was a big project for us. And, he said, look, if it doesn't work, I'll buy everything. So, and that gave us the confidence to sort of get on with it. But he was involved in the blending, in the recipe development. We carried out all the work, but it was Garrett. And we also learned a lot about barrel aging because he brought his staff over, Molly, who was his barrel worker at the time. She came and showed us all their techniques. So it was a long project of about 2 years, and just a fabulous product at the end that's still developing over time. I don't know if you've got any bottles.
We have some left. We have some left.
I went to Vienna and I saw it somewhere. I can't remember where. And it was fabulous to see, and I sent Garrett a picture of it, actually.
Okay, cool.
Still available.
When have you been in Vienna then?
It was a drunken trip. We went to Budapest, to Bratislava, to Austria for the day.
Okay.
Stayed one night in Vienna. So
okay.
So we just hit a list of craft beer bars and had a great time.
Oh, okay, cool. Good to hear.
Such an amazing city. So
thank you. Yeah, it's one of the best cities in the world.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
For the last 2 years, for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
It was good. Okay, but how does it came that Garrett Oliver really spent 2 weeks or more at the brewery?
He's been friends with Jim for a while, one of the founders.
Okay.
They have mutual friends. So we talked about the Kellam Island Brewery before. I think Garrett met Jim through that.
Okay.
So Garrett used to work in England as a brewer as well many years ago. Okay. Learned his trade and got a love of craft beer. And so when Garrett comes to England now, he stays at the Thornbridge Hall, and he'll come and help out in the brewery just randomly. So
cool.
He'll just turn around and Garrett will be there. So
okay, cool. But overall, you did quite a lot of collaboration with, let's say, the who is who from the American brewery scene, huh? You did this Twin Peaks, it was called, with Sierra Nevada.
Yeah, that was.
If I remember right.
I don't remember. I remember thinking at the time that nothing could be any better for a brewer. So where do you go from here as a brewer to work with Sierra Nevada?
Yeah.
But recently we had Matt from Firestone Walker. He was over and we did a West Coast IPA. We also did a Saison that's currently in gin barrels, aging away. So that'll be released soon. So
it is. I'll keep you updated.
This Saison was also a project together with Firestone?
Sorry, what was that?
This Saison, which is aging now in the barrels. Yeah. Was it also a collaboration with Firestone, Walker?
Yeah. Rob and Matt went to Bordeaux and they picked out the barrels for the project.
Okay.
So, yeah, we do quite well, and it's about, if we're going to do a collaboration, it's got to be worth something. We've both sides have got to learn, and we've got to have some fun. So
yeah, that's cool. So then go to the next beer, which is the newest beer in our tasting tonight, I would say.
Yeah, that's it, the Shelby.
It is really, really famous at the moment, I would say. Maybe James, you can start talking a little bit about the project.
So this beer, Shelby, for those of you who've watched the TV series, you'll recognize, the Peaky Blinders branding that we've gotten here. And we were actually approached by the team from Peaky Blinders. They were really keen to, have an actual beer, have a real product that they could, get behind, that they could have as the official beer of the TV show as well. They, knew our reputation. They were really keen to work with us too. And so approached, talked to Simon, who's still, of course, the owner and founder alongside Jim. And yeah, jumped at it really. So a great opportunity to work with a brand that's known, around the world, and just to do something a bit fun, a bit different. For me, I've watched all the series as well. I'm a fan of it. And so it was exciting for me too. And now we've got the beer rolling out as well, that traditional sort of IPA style. Something we wanted to, again, keeping that British traditional feel to it as well. Having the, Murphy on the front of it always helps as well when you can actually put his face on there too. But yeah, it's distinctive. It's still got that Thornbridge feel while still being a Peaky Blinders product. And as you can imagine, we've had an awful lot of phone calls from people getting very excited about this one. With it being Father's Day in the UK very soon as well, it's going very, very well at the moment, I say. So it's good.
Okay. So overall, then you can say it's a good project for the brewery because the numbers are there and...
That's it, exactly. I mean, it's, it's a fun project to be part of. It's something where we get that recognition. Anytime you post about Peaky Blinders, of course, there's a big following already from it. The director was of the TV series was putting it on Instagram the other day because he was enjoying some bottles of it too. And anytime you get something like that, there's a nice spike of, again, phone calls and emails and interest for it. So it was good to, get it out and about, bring it over there to Austria as well, where I know, of course, there's a following for Peaky Blinders there too. So
we are excited to get it, because it's not available everywhere, huh?
No, exactly. So that's partly due to, again, we're working with the production company, we're working with the team who do Peaky Blinders. And so there is, as you can imagine, a lot of licensing that comes with it as well. So it is limited on the amount of places it can go to. Made sure Austria was one of them, as again, I know there's a good following for it there as well. And, as of it being available, we've been able to get it over to Austria, to beer lovers as well to start, and seems to be getting off to a good start there as well. So
perfect.
Well, cheers again.
Cheers again, yeah.
Cheers.
So, Tom, explain us a little bit.
It's not often we get to make a proper British beer anymore, so it's quite a nice project to get involved in. Myself and Ben and Rob, the head brewer, as well. It's quite a traditional malt grist, so mainly Maris Otter, and then you have sort of a little bit of caramalt, a little bit of crystal, and that's it. And then we put in some invert number 2, which is a sort of medium sugar. It gives a lot of flavour that sort of goes very well with the English yeast. And the English yeast is our cask strain, so proper British yeast that's not available from a yeast company,
Okay.
It's very distinctive. Hops-wise, we use the Fuggles and Goldings that we get from Hewkins in Kent. And we also use some Savinsky Goldings as well. So it's a traditional blend of hops that would have been used. We just really enjoy the beer, actually. We brewed, I think we brewed 100 hectolitres today, so it's looking like some big figures on the sales. So it gives us an opportunity, instead of just making beers with Mosaic and Galaxy, to create something that's nicely balanced, that has a bit of history behind it as well. So obviously, Shelby itself is not real. The beer was
But the
reasonably
beer is real. The beer is real.
exactly, and there's a weird sort of time of British history. So just after the war, 1919, the gravities of every beer had been dropped during the war. But this was before they really went, after the Second World War. So the beers were still quite strong. So 5% is about right for an IPA of that period. Obviously, Maris Otter is considered a heritage malt variety, but I think it was in 1950, so that's not quite right. But it's a very low yielding malt with lots of sort of good biscuity flavour. So still feel it's the best one to use.
Because Gabriela is already asking, which hops you used for this beer. Did you only use traditional English hops, but you gave already the answer, that it's really traditional driven, only with British hops, with a special yeast strain, as you already explained.
Yeah.
And also the malt bill.
And this one, we did launch on cask just before the pandemic arrived. So it's one we'll bring back on cask too. So again, we want to keep it that traditional feel. We actually launched it. We opened our own pub in Birmingham a few months ago, and we launched the casks there too, just to, again, tie in nicely with the show and with the Peaky Blinders as well. But that proved to go down very well, and we'll bring casks back of it once, again, we can get back into the pubs and drink cask beer again too.
So I have to try it.
Yeah, definitely.
When we are allowed to go back to the UK, we have to try a cask version. Yeah. Maybe, Tom, you can explain us a little bit, or in a short description, what cask beer means really, because I guess that a lot of our listeners are people already have tasted cask beer by an accident, when they travel to London and they go in a pub, and then they get this warm, flat beer, and they're really disappointed, when it comes to this kind of beers. But maybe you can explain us a little bit, cask. What does cask, real ale or cask mean?
So the easiest way to explain it is the beer is finished off in the cellar of the public house. So we don't finish the beer; it's finished off by the landlord or the pub manager or the bar manager. So in a normal brewery, the maturation, the conditioning takes place within the brewery. But so we'll package the beer at sort of 10 degrees. It'll still have lots of sort of yeast in between 1 and 3 million cells. We'll add isinglass. When it gets to the pub, it needs to settle, and then they'll vent the cask, just as you would do with a Kolsch or an alt beer or something like that, or a keg of Helles. But what we're looking for is beer that's sort of around 1.3 volumes of CO2, between 1.3 and 1.6. The traditional English beers, there's fermentation carrying on in a small way in the cask, which produces a sort of balance of CO2, and it has to be drunk fresh. So in London, the temperature is very warm in the air, so I don't really drink very much good cask beer in London. But if you come north, where it's always nice and cold and the cellars are cold, then you'll get a cool pint of beer that has condition. If a beer is flat, then for me that's not proper cask beer. It has to have some kind of tickle on the tongue, so not carbonated, and it adds to the sort of there's like a drinkability to it. You know how we drink 2 or 3 or 4 pints in one sitting quite easily. When a beer is quite gassy, it's more difficult for us to do that. So it's got a long history. So this is the way beer's been made for the last 300, 400 years in England. And I think it is worth preserving. It's always a shock to the palate when people are not used to cask beer, and especially the quality can vary so much. But that's why it's fun to find the good pubs of England. There's 6 or 7 incredible pubs in Derbyshire that you would fall in love with if you ever went and drunk the beer in. Some of the pubs in London, it's just the beer is warm and it is flat and it's not worth drinking. So
okay, but then Tom, what is the right temperature then? What should the temperature looks like?
It should be cellar temperature, so between 8 degrees and 12 degrees.
Okay.
Never any warmer than 12 degrees, or else the CO2 doesn't hold in the beer. So it will taste flat anyway. So, and it's not refreshing. Like a good cask beer should be sort of satisfying as well. So
okay. And how long it should be on tap, or is it 1 day, 2 days, or should it be drunk out overnight? Or
it should be 3 days maximum, but always best drunk within a day. So there can be excitement sort of online. You know, if you know a cask has gone on fresh, then people flock to that pub and drink it as soon as they possibly can. So it's all part of the beer culture of the UK, and obviously we have a lot of respect for Belgian culture, which is different to your culture.
Completely different.
The Lithuanians, they have a great beer culture that I don't understand. Unboiled worts and crazy beers. I think once you get used to it, you can settle into the drinking of it and appreciate it. You get a lot more flavour when the temperature is a little bit higher. So, and that's where British yeasts really come into play. And the hops that are Fuggles and Goldings, things like North Down, you can really taste the hops an awful lot more in a different sort of way. So it's not a boring beer. You know, it's more subtle, but also more complex as well. So,
production-wise, how many hectoliters were produced last year at the brewery?
I think we did 45,000 hectoliters. We're on for a little bit more this year.
Okay.
So the pandemic, you know, we've moved from on-trade sales just to small packs or bottles and cans.
And last year, if you were to say the shares, you know, of cask, bottled, kegged,
I think cask is about 20 to 30%. So it's still
which is quite a big number. Huh?
Yeah, I mean, in the north of England, every pub is mainly cask. The craft beer bars have keg beers on, and they're very popular with the young people. But yeah, we don't just make beer for the hip generation. We make lots of different beers. But keg bottles, I mean, cans just gone through the roof in the last few years. Bottles have come down a bit. So
okay.
I prefer drinking a bottle of beer, but that's just because I'm old. So
you're not old. Really, you prefer to drink it from a bottle?
I don't know why. It's just it feels more like I'm having a beer. There's more ceremony to it other than just cans. Kind of, they don't have the same sort of value almost.
Okay.
But
quality-wise, there's no big difference at the moment. Huh?
We've got two of the best packaging machines you can buy for our size brewery in the KHS sort of lines. So that the oxygen levels are stupidly low.
Okay.
And we get some great results. So
yeah, good to know. Good to hear. James, let's talk about this beer, you know, a little bit more, you know, about food-wise. What do you think will bear really good with this traditional English IPA?
I mean, this one, again, if you're going for that traditional, maybe you're going into your pubs or what have you. So we talk about grilled meats as just being something, because you've got the little bit of the extra kind of sweetness coming through on the malt base there. That caramel works with, if you caramelize, you've got you on the edge of your meat as well. The hops are there enough that they can pull through, get any fat or anything like that. And it's not going to overpower that flavor. It's not like a big, you know, overly fruity, hoppy New England style IPA. So something like that. If you're drinking cask, you know, cask and kind of British IPA or old school bitters, you want to even pie, you know, if you go into that British pub feel and you really go together with something like that. Again, there's enough heft to get through that thicker, that outer pastry to work with any beef or anything within it as well. And again, just with that little sweetness on there as well. So I'd be looking more main course with a beer like this one. But it's certainly, you know, we've found it will go down well with anything. And again, once we're opening our own pubs back up too, we'll certainly be serving those alongside each other.
Well done. Nice, easy taste. You also easily can drink it the all day long beer, you know, you can call it, you know, after work, really, on a weekend. No, it's really, really good.
Good. Cheers.
Perfect. Next one.
Yeah.
Is this the next one? Yeah.
Oh, we're going Green Mountain next, I think.
Green Mountain is the next.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're actually dropping the ABV down slightly from the Shelby, but we're going, big, kind of hazy, hoppy, big flavoursome IPA on this one for only 4.3%. And can too as well. So
yeah,
you get a nice noise when you open it up. Hopefully you can hear them all on the microphone.
Yeah. Tom, there's a question coming for you.
Okay.
So Martin is asking, how's Thornbridge doing in the area of bottle conditioned beers?
We just produced a little range actually of specific bottle conditioned beers. We did 3 different ones, beers that are more suited to that kind of fine carbonation. So the more British sort of style beers seem to benefit the most.
Okay.
Yeah, I really like doing that. So it's the way I learned how to do beers. We used to do it with wort back in the day rather than sugar.
Okay.
Which is a bit crazy, but it works great. And you get the better flavor, the yeast sort of cleans up the beer beautifully. So, yeah, but we sort of aim for a higher carbonation with those, so 2.8 to 3 volumes. It's a lovely, fine, moussey kind of carbonation. So, it's for homebrewers. It's one of the first lessons I always give is to make sure that you get the carbonation right with the calculation and the right amount of yeast. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of bottle conditioned beers.
They've been.
So Martin, I can tell you that we will get some bottle conditioned beers soon from Thornbridge. One of the next orders we will include some bottle conditioned beers.
Great stuff.
Okay.
We've got the Brother Rabbit, I think will go down well. Blonde, the golden ale at 4%. We can have.
Okay. Brother Rabbit. I have to make some notes. Okay, let's go back to Green Mountain. That's also one of the newer beers, huh? You're doing at the brewery.
Probably maybe 2 years now, I think, on the Green Mountain. So it's been one,
Of the first canned beers?
Oh, sorry, of cans. Yeah, it was one of the first canned beers. We put it very briefly in a bottle. We do a lot of keg for this one. We see that demand in can and keg, particularly for this style. And yeah, it's got lots of listings in the UK. We get good demand for it elsewhere. It packs an awful lot of flavor for only 4.3. So even talking earlier, and about our low alcohol and our table beers and things like that. So we know there is a trend for people wanting the lower alcohol styles with big flavor. And so that's where we went with Green Mountain, calling it the Hazy Vermont Session IPA.
So Tom,
yeah,
why it's an Hazy Vermont Session IPA? Why the name is?
It's in England, we're still not used to strong beer, so any form of session IPA seems to sell a hell of a lot better than anything stronger.
Okay.
But I mean, there's no point in us trying to compete with the very small breweries that are specialists in these kind of New England sort of beers. So we wanted to make something that people could pick up quite easily, that wasn't intimidating, that was consistent, but still had that sort of hot aromatic, and really try and get a consistency there that people could rely upon. So what we didn't want to do was try and out hop one of the smaller brewers. But I think because we have such a good relationship with the hop merchants, we have such quality hops and a good process. So we can get that haze pretty much the same every time, but with no floaty bits or any sort of sediment floating around. As we just use flaked wheat malt for that. So it's quite a simple grist with just a little bit of caramel, mainly Maris Otter, and very low bitterness. And then, yeah, we hop the crap out of it. So
But maybe you can explain us why Vermont is written in that kind of beer style, why it's called hazy Vermont session IPA.
I think James is probably a better place to.
Okay.
We talk about it. Sorry, as a Vermont, as you know, in the same vein as that New England. We're looking at like it being, so you're going to get a lot of that big stone fruit character like that as well, and the Vermont yeast too. So it's that again, it's that style where we're really utilizing that to give that extra flavor into it. But the Green Mountain, the name is also in Vermont as well.
Okay.
So it's an area of Vermont that we took that from.
Okay. Cool. Food-wise, James, what you would say or what you want to
on this one
recommend?
Something we actually recommend on the cans there, we say zesty fish tacos. So something where we're going with a little bit of a I should say just next to the little food pairing piece on there. But if we're talking about
zesty fish tacos,
yeah,
here you can find it.
Yeah, not normal fish tacos. They have to be zesty.
Exactly. That's it. There's something where we're, you're complementing that flavor. So you've got, again, we talk zesty, but it's that lemon, that lime character that's going to come in if you're eating anything like this. And then it's going to work well because you're bringing in that tropical fruit character. There's that low bitterness. So it actually, you don't want it to be kind of almost flabby. So that little extra zing from the tacos itself should work well. But on that one, something like that, or any kind of like quite, not overly spicy, but quite, again, zesty, quite zingy Mexican food works well. So, yeah.
Zesty, yeah. We also can see in Austria, or what we can see in Austria is that, especially for, let's say, the beer lovers, it's a really, really, really nice beer, not for the traditional beer drinkers, but for the younger ones, for really this crafty lovers, nerds, beer lovers, they really, really like that kind of styles,
Yeah.
The moment,
definitely.
It's really hip, and people really searching for the freshest and the most fruity and most drinkable New England hazy, whatever it's called, that's at the moment, it's the go-to for most of the people. But I guess it's the same like everywhere else,
That's it.
Everyone is searching for a New England session. But this one, the point is, really often it's too intense, it's too high in alcohol, you can only drink one and then it's enough, when it comes up to 7, 8, 8.5, things like this, double or triple. But, this Green Mountain, this session version, it's a really nice, again, really drinkable ferment session IPA, but to be fair, every single beer of the brewery is always super, super inside the style, it's always clean. It's always really great. And I never had, as personally, I never had a beer from the brewery which has any mistake, maybe you like it or you like it not, but it was always on the point, they're really, really super, super examples. Also, if you want to make a tasting or give a course to everyone, and you're searching for a perfect Shelby, for example, for a perfect English style IPA, then that's a go-to, and so also Jaipur is a really, really great IPA.
I think we get the as a brewery, it's such a great brewery to work for because we get the resources and the time to do it properly. Nothing's ever rushed. If it wasn't good enough, then it would never have got to packaging. So,
and also ingredients-wise, so you're working with one of the best companies you can deal with, when it comes to the hops, to the malt, and that's also, packaging machine, what you told us,
Yeah, we've got great resources, and Rob's been working in beer, maybe 18 years. I've done 16, 17 years now. We've got a lot of experience, and Rob came from the sort of bottom fermentation background, and I came from an ale background, and so sort of between us, I mean, it just works very nicely. We've got a great team of young brewers, so this style of beer is not mine and Rob's favorite, you know, we were pushed into making it. But then, you know, the younger guys, they were like, oh, we want to use this, we want to use that. And eventually we got the ball rolling and we did it properly. So, you know, the hot blend that we came with the Galaxy and the Mosaic and the Citra and the Amarillo, you know, and the right amounts and getting it just to that sort of nice sort of citrusy flavor. And we hear a lot of people, you know, they go for the very small breweries and their NEPAs, and they're constantly disappointed and paying a lot of money for these beers and very poor quality. And eventually they always come back to Thornbridge. I just want a Green Mountain, you know, something they can trust. So,
yeah. I completely agree when it comes to the prices, you know, because there are some breweries and maybe they're doing a great job, you know, but overall, you know, you never know what you can get in the bottle or the can, you know, and then they come up with prices. You might think, okay, really? Should I pay £9 or £10 for this can, you know? Is it really worthwhile to pay this amount, you know, for a single beer? And then you have the classics, you know, as you told them, you know, Thornbridge, you can see Thornbridge, and it's in draft or it's in a can, then you know what you can get out of 4 points or £4.50, you know? So I completely agree, you know.
And from almost building on what Dom said there, from the other side of it, it is that quality and consistency from the, you know, going out and doing the sales side. It makes my job a lot easier, you know, knowing that Dom and Rob are back at the brewery. Our laboratory is, I mean, you know, for the size of brewery we are, the tests that we can run and the, you know, just again, the testing and making sure before it ever leaves the brewery, it is in such good condition. So I can then go around and talk to people about it and discuss the quality and consistency are always the words I come back to for the beers. And so, yeah, like I say, it makes my job a lot easier, at least knowing that I can rely on that.
That's true, yeah. That's.
I mean, if people want to come and visit when all the pandemic is over, we do a good tour and you can see the inside of the brewery, and the brewers are always around for a chat anyway. So we like visitors.
But you are planning, or you had the plans to open this new visitor center this year in the summer. Is it still on time, or?
We've opened the space, so we have now started to move into there, but with the current situation, we may have to, that may kind of lead on how we actually build it almost. If we have to build it larger with more space between tables and turn it into maybe more of a beer hall than anything else, it's still a little bit up in the air as we're working with government guidance, with looking ahead and seeing. So at the moment, the space is open, but it's only sort of a shop at the minute, so you can go in and take beers away. But that's all. But we plan to build it back up more, dependent on the situation.
Okay, gotcha. Cool. Really nice taste. But now we can go and taste AM PM.
Perfect.
There's also a story with this beer, huh? It had also in the, I don't know, it had another name, you know?
Yeah.
It was All Day IPA, huh?
It was. We also did get a letter as well, I'll be honest about that one too. Whereas we hadn't realized that was a trademark style as such. So we called it an All Day IPA. We got a letter. And so we changed it to Session IPA as well. The name AMPM's always been there. It was just the actual style that we put on there. Instead of Session
it was
IPA,
All Day.
So All Day IPA, yeah. It did begin there, but.
And you did a collaboration with this brewery, with the other brewery? We've had never.
No.
Why not?
I don't know. Never come up.
Maybe after the letter, after you receive the letter, normally, okay, yes, we agree, we're gonna change the name, but then you have to come over and we have to make a beer together.
It's something. There's never any bad blood with things like that. You know, we've sent letters out, other people have. It's one of those things. There's, you know, so much going on now. There's so many new beers and things coming out. Someone often has a name for it, so we always do our due diligence, but sometimes it skips past, unfortunately. But
people make mistakes, so.
The name changed on there, but the style, the name stayed the same, but the style changed slightly.
Cool.
With this one, yeah, we brewed for a few years now because we wanted, before the hazy beers were really kind of starting to come in, this classic session IPA. And at the time we were brewing this, again, we were talking to people from Sierra Nevada, people from the States who were drinking almost in the same way we talked about with the New Englands, 8-9% IPAs. There was that real race, particularly in the States, everything had to be really bitter and hoppy. Everything had to be really strong. So the session IPA started to become a bit more fashionable. In the UK, we've been brewing, as Dom mentioned, a lot of the beers were much, they were lower strength back in the day. So we're certainly used to brewing beers like that, but this one with the American hop to it. So something you can have a few of, you can have a bit of a session on without having to soar ahead in the morning.
Yeah, it's an American style beer, but the gravity, the alcohol level suits British beer culture. So we put it together like an American beer with Munich rather than a crystal. And we use Nelson in it as well. It's a New Zealand hop because it gives it sort of a different kind of tropical fruit flavor that works very well with Citra. But yeah, we found it really popular, and maybe not as popular as the NEPA sort of style, but I think with the slightly older generation who are looking for more hops but don't want to drink a hazy beer, the AMPM does very well. It's a big favorite with a lot of the brewers as well. We like making it, we like drinking it. So
yeah.
But you already told me, James, that soon it will be G-free.
Yeah, that's it. So actually, the latest batch we've made gluten-free, but we're using up the end of our current labels. So the following batch after this, we'll brew it. It'll be gluten-free again, and then we'll have the gluten-free on the labels as well.
Okay.
And with gluten-free, being under 20 parts per million there.
Okay. And will it then replace Satsuma? Well, Satsuma is the gluten-free beer at the moment, huh?
So AMPM will effectively become the core gluten-free beer, and we also have Satsuma and Galaxia, which will brew as occasional beers. So they'll come in every so often on those. We'll probably brew them quarterly or what have you on there, just to have a bit of a variety. We're seeing a really good demand generally in the UK and across Europe for gluten-free beers. So it's good to have the core one and then a bit of a seasonal for it as well.
Okay. So Gabriela is asking, maybe both of you, what's your favorite beer style, James?
It probably is somewhere between the low, like the pale ale, session IPA. Again, traveling, working with beers, it's always quite important to keep it fairly low ABV because doing a lot of talking after a beer or two with people. So you want as much flavor as you can get whilst not getting too wild. So probably
0.5 also a good option for you, huh? For the business. 0.5, then it's a good option.
a little more. Not too boring, but so up to AMPM has actually been a very popular, particularly for me at the moment. Sierra Nevada Pale Ale was really my personal kind of gateway beer into good beer and craft beer. So having something between that 4 and 5% that just has that big flavor to it, and is light. Although even Market Porter, our 4.5% porter has been I've been drinking a lot of recently too. So.
Yeah, it's a great beer.
Yeah, so something like that where you get just a whole different flavor, but it's still that lower strength. So probably between those two, I'd say at the moment.
And you? And yours?
It depends on the weather. English bitter and English mild, the two cask beers that I was brought up on. We used to, in my hometown, we'd mix half and half together in a pint glass, and that'd be called a pint of split, and it'd be about 3.8%, and that's what I was brought up on. So you start drinking in the pubs, or we used to start drinking in the pubs around the ages of 15 to 16. You start to learn beer culture. And then sort of went through a period of wanting more and more hops, and that's kind of died back, and I'm back on the cask bitters now. But I've always got a soft spot for an imperial stout or a barley wine, a well-matured sort of version like the Harveys. Or I'm looking forward to us making Braccia again. Hopefully we can.
Yeah.
I also have some old bottles. of Braccia.
Nice.
Yeah, I like beer. Is it has different places in my life. I love going to the pub. I do like a beer at home. If I'm drinking a beer at home, it has to kind of pass the Chablis test. Would I rather drink a bottle of Chablis or a bottle of this beer? And so a lot of the quality of new brewers and small brewers falls down on that. So, but Christmas time, it's definitely Imperial Stout time. So,
cool. Are there any plans to brew something like or similar to Braccia again at the hall?
Braccia, we will brew again.
Okay. And also some newer limited versions which will be made only in the hall?
Probably the latest like seasonal barrel-aged beer in a similar vein was Necessary Evil, the bourbon barrel-aged stout. So brewed up and then aged out in bourbon barrels.
But it was not brewed up at the hall?
No, that one wasn't. But now we're doing more of that kind of barrel aging style at the moment. We'll definitely do Braccia again. But otherwise it'll be, as Dom mentioned, we've got some collabs kind of squirreled away in barrel. We're doing, we do the Heart Desires, Love Among the Ruins, the Days of Creation, the kind of Belgian style, sour ales as well with the fruit into. So there'll always be some specialties coming through for sure, including Braccia again. Then
Michaela is asking, will Colorado Red available again?
It's in bottles now.
Tastes really good too.
Yeah,
it's a really good beer. That
it is. I've got it in my fridge.
Because it was her first craft beer ever. Loved it, and so it was the first. And she didn't find it in Vienna or in Austria anymore. And so then I have to order a case, at least one case for Michaela. So Michaela, soon you will get it.
Stick it on the order.
We're already listed 2 new products.
That's it. I've written it down. We're all set. I'll remember. Don't worry.
And Brother Rabbit.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and actually another American collaboration as well, as originally, worked with the guys at Odell's Brewing to do the Colorado Red the first time too. So a good, a great beer. Like I say, I've got some in my fridge here and always enjoy drinking that one.
James, food-wise, to pair with AM/PM?
For me, I'd go, again, something meaty. I'd go into that kind of burgers, barbecue, something like that. But you get a big, rich burger. Again, the hot in this similar way in that Shelby, there's a little extra sweetness in there that's going to work well with that outside that sort of slightly caramelized meat again. But you want that hops because you've got that big bread, you've got lots of whatever else you want on that burger. You need a little extra oomph to kind of get through it. So that hot bitterness and character is going to work on there as well. So yeah, for me, I'd go a big burger for that one.
So when was the rebranding of the labels?
It really was kind of around the start of this year. We'd gone into cans already. So it was a steady rebrand, to be fair, because we didn't want to go into cans and then have to change them. So the rebrand began with our cans last year. All the cans got the new branding on and then worked through. I mean, partly it was logistically, we had a lot of bottle labels to get through as well. So we then worked to get through all of those old bottle labels. And then, it'd be one beer at a time and then one beer and then one beer. So suddenly Jaipur was coming out and other beers would take a little bit longer. But really by the start of this year, we had pretty much everything into new bottle labels and new branding as well. Keg clips, cask badges all changing with it too. A little bit of a change to the way we word the logo as well at the same time. So all sort of steady, but worked through from this year.
And how's the reaction from the market?
It's been very good. I think it's given us, you can look across all those beers. You could before, of course, but having, we'll drink it next, but people have always commented now on the way that it is that bright orange. It really takes the eye, but you put it alongside our other beers within the range, and you know that that is a range of Thornbridge beers. So it helps us with having the almost the eye catching on the shelf as well. You see the can next to the bottle, you know it's all the same brand. And we never wanted to go that route of, you know, comic strips, cartoon characters, that kind of thing.
Doesn't fit really to a brewery. Yeah.
No, it just
It's
doesn't
really
work.
the
It's
brewery.
not for us. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not what we're looking to do. So it's classic. It still has that Thornbridge feel to it. You know, at the back, it's got that brocade like we had on our old branding as well. But it's also, it stands out. It's simple. The name's bright. We want all the, you know, you see that color, the orange, you see the word Jaipur on there, and it says Thornbridge straight away is the aim. So overall, the feedback's been very good. And again, it helped that we were launching cans alongside it, so we were able to then bring those to market at the same time too.
I think it was a long time coming, the branding changing. We hadn't done anything for years, really. And people are making noises saying, when are you going to change the branding? I think they were hesitant because people have launched rebrands and changed it, and it's gone down really badly with customers. And I don't know if we were worried. I just really wanted to get it right. I think I don't know anything about branding, but I know it helps sell beer, so I know how important it is.
Me either, but I really, you know, when James showed me for the first time, you know, the new artwork, you know, I was really impressed, you know, because it still have this traditional feeling, but it also gets a little of a modern touch, you know. Get rid of Laura maybe was not the easiest decision, but overall, you know, it was really, it looks really, really good, you know.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, that was the feedback overall, and where we were trying to really land with it. So, but the feedback's been positive. All the beers are now, any new beers, of course, are rolling out with that new branding and label, and then hopefully instantly become recognizable as Thornbridge beers too. But there was a lot of time and effort into it, you know, working with a branding company. We wanted someone who really understood Thornbridge. So they were up at the brewery, up at the hall, everywhere, just getting a feel for us and working closely, you know, right from Jim and Simon on down to understand Thornbridge as a whole before launching the rebrand too.
Cool. Then we're going to taste the flagship, huh?
Yeah, Jaipur time.
Happy days.
So this is the one. I know I was waving it around a little bit earlier, but hopefully most people have seen the Jaipur. And it is very timely.
I think so.
I hope so. I hope so.
I think so that most of the people already saw it, you know.
It is very timely that we're drinking a Jaipur now. So last Sunday, so only 2 days ago, we celebrated the 15th birthday of Jaipur. So it was now just over 15 years ago that we actually brewed it for the first time and started selling those few casks from the small hall brewery out into the local Derbyshire area. And now, you know, it's in bottle, can, keg, cask in 40 different countries with over 100 awards. So we celebrated with a kind of virtual Twitter party, as of course everything's fairly virtual at the moment, but we got an awful lot of love and excitement and people sharing stories and photos of times they've enjoyed Jaipur. So yeah, it's certainly a timely week for us to be enjoying it together.
Then cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
It's a question for you, Tom. Martin is asking, Tom, do they still serve split in your hometown? Have to try.
And unfortunately not. And
what is your hometown? What is your hometown?
It's Blackburn in Lancashire, in the northwest. In the olden days, like a family brewery controlled all of the pubs in the town.
Okay.
And that brewery was Thwaites, but unfortunately they sold most of the pubs. You can still get bitter and mild, and you can still do it yourself. But the young generation of landlords and pub managers, they don't remember it properly. So, yeah, you're best off going to sort of the Black Country near Birmingham, the old industrial areas just outside of Birmingham, where you can still get a lot of mild, a lot of bitter.
But it's not the nicest neighborhood, huh?
It's not too bad. It's not the Peak District.
Yeah. Well, I have to write this down. Split.
Yeah, I mean, it's got other names like Mixed in other parts of the country. The heavy industrial areas had a lot of mild because people needed liquid refreshment. They were working hard all day. So
cool. It's a classic. A few words from you, Dom, about Jaipur.
Okay, so it's 5.9%, 1055 OG. The cask version is slightly different to the bottle version in terms of finishing gravity. So the cask version is drier because there's not as much carbonation to lift it. But it's a blend of, I think it's 6 different hops. The main hops are Chinook and Atanum, and we take most of the Atanum in the country, and I think Brewdog take the rest of it. It's quite difficult for anyone else to get hold of anymore.
Okay.
But it's a distinctive low alpha, very aromatic hop that works very well with Chinook, and I think that's half of the appeal of Jaipur. After drinking the Green Mountain, you notice the bitterness a lot more in Jaipur. It sort of hits the spot, you know, and it feels like a sessionable beer, even though it's 5.9%. So
dangerous.
And you know, we make so much of it. I must have made millions of liters, and I can write the recipe down, you know, without thinking about it. You know, the mash temperatures and everything. So it's a pleasure to make it. I feel like the curator of it. So when I'm gone, someone else will be making it. You know, it's an honor to be making the beer. It's got such a cult following. People still see it on the bar and go crazy. They'll phone their friends and all go down to the bar to drink it together. So it's still got such a value, even after 15 years in this weird market of beer that we're in at the moment. So, yeah, we love making it. It's definitely my favourite Thornbridge beer to brew and probably to drink as well. So
okay, but then it's the cask version, I guess, huh, for you?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay.
But I do like the keg version.
Okay.
You know, I remember when we sort of started making the keg version, because it was all cask when I started, and we had to change a couple of things like the finishing gravity and the original gravity and the dry hopping. You know, beer at different temperatures, it does more than you think to the beer. So yeah, so we sort of produce a Jaipur for cask and we produce a Jaipur for keg. They're both 5.9%, but we treat them as different.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's all Marisotto with just a touch of Vienna. And the hops never change. They haven't changed for maybe 6 or 7 years, and it's a blend from Hopsteiner and Yakima Chief, basically. So
okay, cool.
Yeah,
James, food-wise.
Food. This one we actually on the can for this we put Thai curry on there. I mean, again, you go down the whole IPA and curry route, but I'd also go, if you're going a bit traditional British, fish and chips, where you've got that kind of you know, that fatty, greasy outer of the batter on the fish as well. So it's going to work really well, just cutting nicely through that. Again, Dom mentioned, you know, it's the nice bitterness that comes through on Jaipur works really well with that. I live about 50 meters maybe from a really good fish and chip shop, so it's my go-to. If I go down there and get some fish and chips, I'll come back and crack open a can of Jaipur as well to go with it. So probably my favorite for that. But yeah, as Dom mentioned, this is really that beer. It's almost one personally I come back to a lot. You know, I'll go and try lots of other beers, but it's always here in my fridge. I know I can come to it if I'm drinking in any of our pubs. Jaipur is always the one that it does hit the spot as well, be it cask or keg, or bottle or can, of course, as well.
Cool. Now before we come to the last beer, Porter. Give us a little bit of an overview of the history of Porter in the UK, because there are so many, but really a short overview. There are so many stories, and it was also this time, when Porter wasn't really produced anymore in the UK, huh?
Yeah, that's correct. So Porter had been made since the 1700s. It used to be 100% brown malt. Before brown malt was the brown malt we know of today. So it had some diastatic power, so you could ferment it out. It's a long history. Everyone talked about IPA, but we were sending more porter by about 3 or 4 times to the troops in India during the 1800s. So IPA was famous because it was the drink of the officers and the rich people. But for all of the rest of the nobodies and the troops and the plebs and the foot soldiers, they were drinking porter. So you'll see a few East India porters knocking around now as well. And Guinness made the most famous one, of course. And that became that they stopped making porter. Eventually, they just started making stout, which is short for the stoutest porter. But yeah, it really died out when bitter and pale ale started getting going on draft in bars. So in the 1950s and the 60s, porter was kind of over. And I think it was actually Anchor Steam Brewery in San Francisco that brewed a porter again, and it started to gain a bit of traction with microbreweries. And the Americans.
Who was then
Sorry,
go ahead. I will come later with this question.
The Americans kind of sort of revived the style more than the British did, and then the microbreweries got this idea of brewing porter again and brought it back. So porter was the everyman's drink. It's what everyone drank in the UK and also in Ireland. And there was basically 2 different barrels of porter in the cellar. So you'd have a stale old version that had a heat of acetic kind of vinegar sort of flavour, and then you'd have the fresh barrel. And so you do a pulse of some of the old beer and then let it settle down and then top it up with the fresh stuff. And so that's why you've got the Guinness pour. They sort of let it settle. They're sort of mimicking the old way of having 2 barrels of porter. So this is before you could get bright yellow beer in England. So it was all developed a long time ago. But you could write a book on the history. It's got a long history that's tied in with a lot of the big breweries in London. Fuller's London Porter only got invented in sort of 2005 or not that long ago. So.
Was Colonel, the brewery in London, one of the first brewers which kind of revived porter? Is this true?
Not really, but they started. There's a guy called Ron Pattinson who's the beer historian, and he took one of his recipes and sort of this sort of pale brown and black malt grist. So it's mainly pale malt, a little bit of brown malt, and a little bit of black malt. And that comes from Fuller's, the Fuller's brewing recipes.
Okay.
And they started using, pairing that sort of beer makeup and then adding a couple of different hops like Centennial or Citra or something like that. So,
okay.
But yeah, the Colonel were instrumental in making it popular in the later generation of microbreweries as well.
Okay.
It's a good fun beer, and I'm glad it's around. So it's the idea of porter is that it's sessionable, like bitter or Helles or anything like that. It's built for drinking a lot of generally.
Yeah. And that comes with the market porter we mentioned earlier. So one of the newer beers that we've been doing recently, but at 4.5%. So it's still that like classic kind of porter style. And we produced that one because people were saying to us, they were like, oh, no one's brewing this now, actually. People are brewing either big American porters or strong porters. And so people wanted a more of a lower strength, easy drinking porter beer in bottle as well. So we've started to bring that one back more regularly too now.
And market porter is something like a one-off, or it will be available the whole year?
It'll be available for most of the time, yeah, at the moment. So.
Okay. So then let's go and taste this one now. Cocoa Wonderland.
Big chocolate porter. So, and this, again, we see this style. People want pastry stouts, that sort of thing. They want, I mentioned now people are saying, oh, we kind of want a porter where it doesn't have all these extras in there too. But this one has been around for a little while. We brewed as a bit of a one-off beer to start, just some casks at the hall. Actually, this was voted one of the first casks went down to Sheffield Beer Festival and was named best beer in Sheffield in the same way that the Jaipur had a few years before. And almost since then, we haven't, we've kept it as a core beer, brewed it a lot. The story came, it was created with two ladies who ran a chocolate shop in Sheffield. So they ran a shop called Cocoa Wonderland. They wanted to brew up a beer to celebrate their 10th anniversary. It was National Chocolate Week as well. So they came and brewed the beer with us on cask for the first time. And now we just can't stop brewing it because the demand comes in. So bottle, on keg, and on cask as well. We get, it certainly goes down nicely for us.
Cool. So, Tom, tell us a little bit technical-wise about this beer.
There's different ways of approaching a porter, and the general idea these days is not to use any roast barley or too much burnt malt, so there's no astringency. It becomes just a bit easy to drink. So reserve that for the stouts. But it is quite a complicated malt grist. If anyone wants it, just send me an email. But there's a lot of Munich in there, and then a lot of brown malt, which is kind of like a very light chocolate malt. And then there's some chocolate malt as well. And it's just that it's a sort of very tried and tested malt grist of the head brewer. He's very proud of it. Very low bitterness. California ale yeast, which is very neutral and just lets the malt flavor shine. Absolutely no hops in at the end of boil, so just a little bit of bitterness. And then chocolate wise, it's slightly bit complicated. We have to use the cacao nibs. We use some organic cacao nibs, but then also we use a lot of chocolate husks from one of the chocolatiers on the east coast of England. So they'll send us bags of these husks, and I think we actually get more of the chocolate flavor from those, which is just a shell which contains the nib. And then obviously when we first started making the beer, we didn't use lactose. And then I can't remember why we started using lactose, but it kind of works. It became a pastry stout after, I think with when we started bottling and when it gained a lot more carbonation than the cask version, I think it worked better with some lactose. So it's got quite high finishing gravity, maybe 5 Plato, sort of 5.5 Plato. So it's very popular beer.
Yeah.
Before you add the chocolate, it just tastes like a strong porter, and then it just kind of ties it together. So it's not just people say, oh, you're making that for women, but normal people enjoy chocolate as well, and men enjoy chocolate. It's popular with every sort of group.
That's true. We also can see in Austria, that the demand for especially Cocoa Wonderland is growing also, in the last couple of months. It seems to be, it can be soon number 3, per sales, in the Austrian market, and that shows also something, because as you told them, it's not only for ladies, because also men's really like chocolate,
It's like a dessert beer, basically.
Yeah.
So
it's really a dessert.
Yeah, and that's if we do these pairings, of course, we often finish with a Cocoa Wonderland, but again, you do it almost as a dessert, really. If you've got a menu or something like that, and you want anything to put towards the end, I'd certainly be doing this one. I mean, you mentioned foods as well. We see people do this with like really rich stews, like venison or something like that. But otherwise, you're going to put it with, you kind of complement it with a nice, big, rich, almost a chocolate brownie, something like that. If you want something with a little bit of extra tartness in there too, some sort of like red fruits, red berries that are going to give you tartness in the dessert too, that it cuts through and contrasts quite well. So one you can play around with a little bit. People have actually sent us in the past like brownies with, you know, Cocoa Wonderland in them and things too. So it's quite a fun beer to do that with as well. If it's actually cooking along with too.
Yeah, I think when you're cooking with beer, it has to have a low bitterness, or else it'll just ruin the food. So Cocoa Wonderland with its low bitterness and its lots of malt flavors and the chocolate flavor, it just works. It can work really well with a nice rich sort of stew, or casserole. So yeah, it's a good cooking beer. So
yeah. With a stew, why not?
Yeah. And that's, again, like I say, one that goes well there in Austria, but really for the UK, for pretty much every export market this enters into, it's one of the top beers that goes into it. And people from all over enjoy it. And actually, we find even at 6.8%, people typically come back for more than one. So whether they regret it the next day, I don't know. But yeah, it definitely goes down well.
So it was perfect. It was great. One last question from my side to you, Tom. What was the funniest project you did at your time at Thornbridge? When you think back, the funniest project, you know.
That's a good
question. When you think back a little bit, maybe there's something, you know, maybe it was the collaboration with Tom Oliver and Brooklyn, or was it something like a barrel-aged beer? Or...
That was the craziest. You know, we were so worried about that serpent beer because it had never been done before, and we were tasting the barrels, and it was like we basically took this perfect Belgian golden ale and ruined it with cider, and then put it into some bourbon casks. We couldn't sort of make the connection with what Garrett was thinking about, but then it did. After a year, it was like, this is amazing. So, and yeah, that was good fun. But we've done collaboration brews with Terrapin. Remember that day, a big group of American brewers from Oscar Blues and various other American brewers came in, and they kind of trashed the place. There was glass everywhere, and I was going crazy. I was just like, get out of my brewery. We made a big rye ESB that day, and it turned out great. You know, a lot to learn from the Americans because they're not constrained by sort of my way of thinking, or, you know, the Germanic way of thinking. You know, they've got no limits, they've got no history, so they can just do whatever they want. I think it's sometimes good to get involved in that and just say, okay, yeah, let's use this many hops per barrel, or, you know, that sort of thing. So, and they have a different, you know, their malt qualities from their malts is quite poor, so they have to think of different ways of using malt. There was English and German malts are obviously extremely good quality. So, yeah, so it's always fun to work with other brewers. Even in England, we do a lot of collaborations, and it's never a boring brew day. So, apart from recently with the pandemic, no one can come and visit. So,
that's cool. Okay. So, are there any questions we should answer or we can answer to you guys?
From us?
No. From the others. From all these people which are sitting at home. No. Then I would say thank you, Tom. Thank you, James, for your time, you know.
Thank you, Markus.
Really, really, really nice, you know, and especially Tom, you know, you told us some secrets, you know, you teach us a little bit, and if it's really possible that one or two maybe send you an email, you know, to get some more details when they are home brewers, then
absolutely
they can find you, and we will have your email address. And so if anyone needs some help
it's
from Tom, then
Dominic at thornbridge.co.uk. So, and we answer emails all the time, even from small breweries in the UK, asking about equipment, and, you know, it's constant, the stream, and we treat home brewers and commercial brewers the same because we're all involved and we all love the same thing. So it's about having that passion for the product. So and there's no one more passionate than home brewers. So
cool. That's true.
Thank you very much, Markus.
Yeah,
thank you, Tom. And I will send you some Helles and Lagers
Happy day.
Ja, happy day. Okay, have a good evening. Bye bye. So, danke fürs Zuschauen. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Der nächste Termin ist nächste Woche ganz kurz, am 16. Ich glaube, ich hoffe, am 16. auf jeden Fall ist es eine Trappistenbierverkostung mit dem Andreas Urban und mit dem Rick Kempen aus den Niederlanden. Ich hoffe, es hat Spaß gemacht und wir sehen uns demnächst wieder. Ich wünsche euch noch einen schönen Abend, gute Nacht und noch viel Spaß mit den restlichen Bieren. Tschüss.